Welcome to 5 Good Minutes.
You're listening to today's inspirational message on the book of Hebrews with Brady Randall.
This week we've been looking at how Jesus is superior, that he's better than anyone, anything, any religion. There is no one like Jesus. And we read in verse 3, starting this, "The Son is the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation of his being, sustaining all things by his powerful word. After he had provided purification for sins, he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty in heaven." Now, this is the only place in the New Testament where this term for radiance is used. And it means to emit or to shine light. But notice this, Jesus does not merely reflect God's light, but he himself radiates with light. And in the Bible, God's glory is often associated with bright light. And we see several instances in the New Testament where this light is shown. And one of them is what's called the Transfiguration, where Jesus is transfigured in brilliant light before 3 of his apostles. And the voice of God thunders. He says, "This is my Son, whom I love and with whom I'm well pleased." We also see this bright light shining when Saul, who became Paul, is on the Damascus road. He meets Jesus on the road and he's blinded by the light of Christ. So Jesus radiates this light. And not only does he radiate God's glory and light, but it says he's the exact representation of his very being. Now, this is a printing term, which is saying that Jesus is the exact imprint, representation of God. He is like God in every way. In fact, he is God himself. Now, this is a staggering claim, but one that the author makes absolutely. So he's the author of scriptures. He's the fulfillment of all of the Old Testament. There is no one like Jesus. And so therefore, there is no fuller and better view of God than when you look at Jesus. There's no one like Jesus, not only for who he is, but for what he's done. And notice what this verse says. It says he sat down at the right hand of the Father. Now that's very significant because the high priest at this time and on the Day of Atonement would go into the holiest place, the Holy of Holies, where the presence of God was known to have dwelt. And this is where he would make sacrifices for the sin of the people. But the high priest didn't sit down because his work was never finished. But here, Jesus, as the high priest, the great high priest, the one who intercedes for the Hebrew Christians, the one who intercedes for all Christians, he sat down at the right hand of majesty, the right hand of God. And the right hand was considered the place of honor, authority, and power. And the reason he sat down was because the work that was needed to atone or to pay for sin was completely paid in full on the cross. Everything that was needed to destroy sin was obliterated by Christ. That's why one of the last things that Jesus said while he was on the earth, as he hung on the cross, he said, "It is finished." Let me ask you this. When do you ever feel like your work is finished? My guess is the answer is never, and this could be housework, it could be your occupation. If you work in an office, there's more people to call, get connected, emails to answer, projects to work on. If you're in the labor industry, once you get a project completed, there's one more after that. There's more grass to cut, more things to paint, projects that do not end. If you're a parent, it never stops. There's always more to do. And sometimes we take this mentality with God that if we are going to get on God's good side, there's got to always be more we have to do to measure up, even to get into heaven, we might think. More prayers, more obedience, more giving, more penance, repenting. But those things do not earn our way to God. They simply can't, and living like that is exhausting. But what Jesus offers instead is something that is completely finished. Jesus did the work, and if you trust in him, you now live out of the finished work of Jesus. I've heard it said that grace is opposed to earning, but it's not opposed to effort. Jesus is the one who earned our way to God. And it's out of that settled debt that Jesus paid for sin on our behalf that we can entrust ourselves to him. The work is completed, but get this, it only counts and is effective for those who trust in him. We can't, but Jesus did. It is settled forever in the court of heaven. So you and I are invited to joyfully receive and live out of that reality today and always.
Thanks for joining us here today. There's a lot of great content to explore on Orchard Hill Plus and on the Orchard Hill main feed from the weekend. Have a great day.